Hi everyone, it's Yen and welcome back. This is part 2 of my 3-part series on how you can take your instruction and bring it into distance learning. Today I'm going to walk you through our distance template so that you can take your instruction, plan it out, and then share it with your students and your teachers. So thank you for joining me today on That's Why. So let's start with the second myth. Instructional time for distance learning is the same or equal to face-to-face instructional time. Meaning, if I spend 2 hours on math in school, I should spend 2 hours of math at home. And my answer to that is nope. And here's why. Remember, in part 1 of this video, I talked about how the lack of physical presence, context cues, and social cueing can make you feel isolated and alone. You also have technical barriers which lead to increased cognitive loads. Most folks aren't used to giving or receiving schooling online as opposed to getting instruction in person. So it takes more time for people to process things online. This is much like when you're learning how to drive. It takes all your concentration to operate a car the very first time. You have to think about what your instructor is saying. You also have to think about how you're driving the car. You can't do these things automatically until you have more and more experience. A third thing here, which is that your attention is split into 2 places, and let me explain. When your students are online, you're in this online space right here. But you and your students are also in your own individual physical spaces. These physical spaces affect the amount of attention that your students may give to your actual instruction. This split attention span and increased cognitive load means that it takes more time to learn a topic online than it does when you're in person. It also means that you have to tweak the way you teach because you can't control your students' environment. So when you're going online, you have to imagine that you're creating a menu of items for your students to choose from on a certain topic. You can think of yourself as the restaurant owner and the server. And when you give them the menu, you're helping your students select what they would like to consume. It's up to your students to choose what they will eat, so to speak. Because of the nature of distance learning and that extra cognitive load, it's unrealistic to expect that your children are going to eat everything on the menu. But by spending time carefully crafting a menu, you can create an environment for personalized and individualized learning to happen. As you write your lesson plans, you want to strip things down to the barest bones. For learning objectives, less is more. Now, when you're thinking of ways to give instruction to your students, be it live streaming, pre-recorded video, or written instruction, give plenty of scaffolds. Clear instructions, tutorials, and other supports are going to be important. You may even want to provide different supports for parents too. For instance, you can tell your parents, if you don't understand a concept, here's a video to watch to help you. Your resources are those different menu items that you're going to offer to your students. So provide variety, different kinds of texts, videos, games, tutorials, things that your kids can consume based on their specific learning preferences or even how they're feeling that day. Here's the lesson template that I prepared for you. You can download this in the description and go ahead and use it, modify it however you see fit. You would put the topic of your lesson here, and then in this template, you're only picking one learning objective. Especially if you haven't done distance learning before, you're going to strip everything down to the bare bones and then use the resources to create a menu that your kids can choose from. And because you're creating several different resources for this learning objective, this lesson template can last for an entire week. While the resources can last for an entire week, the community building activities might be something that you want to include every day so that you can connect with your students and let them know you're there, and so that you can build that learning community. The driving question is like your I can statements, but the driving question is going to help your students think about how they're going to use these resources to answer that driving question. Now, you may have more than one driving question, and you may want to give your kids a choice of which driving question they want to answer. In terms of resources, Teacher-led resources are your live streams. They might be your video recordings of you doing a procedure or explaining something or singing or reading a book. Videos can be both instructional and procedural. What's going to be important about all of these resources is what kinds of scaffolds you're going to put in. And when I say scaffolds, that means what kind of instructions are you going to give to both students and parents so that they know how to effectively use these resources in the way that you intended for them to be used. Offline resources are things that you can print out for students who may not have access to the internet. So for example, articles, instructions for origami, or T-charts and things that kids can work from home but may not need to access the computer. Games, I would also say you can use both online and offline. There's tons of different games out there right now, and we're going to list some of those things in our teacher's guide in the next few days. For student input and output, I think of this as two things. Student input is any questions that they have about what you're doing and how they're going to provide you with that input. Can they text you? Can they call you? Can they send you an email? Can they raise their hand in the middle of a live stream? Can they create videos with their questions? So you want to think about what kind of input you can get as you're providing this menu to your students. Student output is what are they going to produce in order to answer the driving question? Are they going to create an interactive ebook? Are they going to create a brochure, maybe a poster? Maybe they do a T-chart. So think about what kinds of outputs you want. Outputs are a powerful way to get students to learn. And then family instruction, obviously, especially with younger kids, you're going to need the help of adults in the house to do some of these activities. So you may even want to include videos specific for family members so they know exactly how they can help their students with the lesson that you provided. I included a section here on instruction, and these instructions are specific to how are you going to introduce this menu to your students? Are you going to email it to them? Are you going to mail it to them? Are you going to put it on a website? And then how are you going to explain how this menu works? So this lesson plan is very short, it's very simple, and it's broad, so that hopefully it can help you with a variety of different goals that you have in mind when it comes to distance learning. Now, as of this recording, it's March 26th, and this is week 2 of being home and practicing social distancing for me. I get moments where I try to be normal, convince myself that life can continue, and that my duty is to support and help where I can. Then there's moments when I just break out the ice cream, lay on the rug with the dog, and stare up at the ceiling fan because nothing about this pandemic is normal. Sometimes work is actually an escape. Sometimes it's a necessity, especially for those of you suddenly finding yourselves working from home for the first time. Giving your students the opportunity to learn when they feel like it can actually be a real comfort. It can help them feel like they're making progress and that they're in control. And they may need that because everything else in their life may be out of their control right now. So I ask you to be gentle with yourself. To expect to teach your students with the same rigor and pace as before is really unrealistic for both you and your students. The menu you provide will be a relief to families because they'll receive that structure, they'll receive things that they can do so that they can feel productive, and they'll receive that much needed connection with you. Right now, knowing that you're there is the most important thing. Everything else, it's gonna fall in place when the time is right for it. So that's all I have for you today. Tomorrow, I'm going to share with you a sample lesson plan that I put together to help give you some ideas while you're creating your own menus. So to prepare for tomorrow's video, and this is only if you're so inclined to prepare, if you feel like preparing, then think about the essential bones for what you want to teach. Then, build that menu by using the lesson template in the links. Thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe for more tech teaching tips and share this video with whom you feel would benefit. Be safe out there and see you soon. Bye now!